he was crazy. I mean, he did some stuff that just is unbelievable. And
like what? What? Is he dead now?
I don't know.
Okay, I hope we don't get a.
No, he probably is, but I liked him,
right?
But I didn't know any better,
right?
I was a freshman in
right.
college. I thought, well, this is what
we do.
does.
This is what we do.
But we got beat at Maryville College, our second game. We were on the road, and we got beat down there. And he turned around in the fourth quarter, and we were ahead, and they were driving. And he said, if we lose this game, we're going to practice after. And we did. And we practiced for about 3 hours before we
That's
left.
illegal.
Well, it wasn't back then. It may have been. But anyway, he took us out on their practice field, and their players had gone to eat, come back to the dorms. They're hanging out on the balconies, hollering at us, throwing stuff. And we're out there, and he's killing us. And got worse. We were playing Hampton Sydney at home.
Welcome to the Off the Floor podcast. What is off the floor? Off the floor is a mentality. You're either eating off the floor, which is hunger, or you're getting off the floor, which is a bounce back. We all go through that in life.
Off the floor with my papa and your host, Calvin Wilson. Peace. Peace, birth Steelers.
I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, Coach Jeff Herron.
Good to be here, Calvin. Good to be here.
Yeah.
But I'm none of those three things you just said, though.
You might be a myth. You may be a myth. You're definitely a legend. I'm amazed by your record. 30 years in Georgia, 309 and 67, 32 years overall, 334 and 69. So that means outside of Georgia, you lost 2 football games.
Well, that's true, but unfortunately they were playoff games, and so our season ended on those 2 losses. But the South Carolina 4A there was short, but it was sweet, and we had 2 real good years and really some really good kids.
And as we're recording this right now, Coach was just not inducted, but what would you call it? You hadn't been inducted yet. But
that'll be this summer. But they announced this year's class.
Into what?
Well, it's the National High School Football Hall of Fame.
You were that good in high school?
I really was, Calvin. I was a heck of a player, but no, I've been mad ever since they announced it because I thought I was going to get in as a player, but no, it's for coaching and. And again, I'm going to say this right off the get-go. Stump Mitchell last year was inducted.
Right.
And he was the first guy from Georgia. They've only been doing it. This is the 3rd class.
Wow.
And Stump, right now is the only guy from Georgia in it, which is hard to believe. But so Stump, I think, campaigned really hard for me and, was able to get me in front of the right people, I guess, and so I owe Stump a lot of thanks there, and then Richard Dent is going to be in this year's class,
right.
So we'll
out
get
of Atlanta,
3. Yeah, we'll get 3 from Georgia now.
Wow, that's absolutely crazy. So, Coach, let's go. I want to take them through the years of where were you born and raised, and who are your parents?
Well, I was born in Kingsport, Tennessee,
okay.
But Virginia is my home state. The only reason I was born in Kingsport because that's where the hospital was, but right on the Tennessee-Virginia border in southwest Virginia. And, my parents, you met my mom and dad, and they were great. I was an only child. They tried, but my mom had some difficulty, and so I was an only child, which didn't turn out to be such a bad thing for me, I guess. But, my parents were they were good. They had their problems like all parents do, and all of us do. But they did a good job, and they always supported me. And heck, they moved down here. When we moved here, and then they would go back to their house in Virginia in the summers and Christmas and things like that. But they spent the majority of the time down here and helped raise our kids and continued to raise me, I guess you'd say.
I was about to say they were an intricate part of the community when they were here. I mean, they were. I'm saying your mom used to come to practice, your dad used to come to practice. It was awesome, man. And I used to see them after the games and stuff, man. It was good to see them.
Well, my dad never met a stranger.
Yes.
He that was just something. I'm not real good with that, but he loved talking to people and stuff. And my mom, she was always in the middle of something. It was always some controversy with her, beauty shop stuff and all that. But they really took to this community. It was a lot like where we were from.
Right.
Small town kind of feel to it. So. Yeah, those were some good years, and I'm glad I got to spend those with them.
So, who was your first coach? I'm talking about Little League. Who was your first Little League coach, and did they pick you out as the best athlete on the field?
No, because I wasn't the best. If they had picked me out, they wouldn't have been a very good coach. But the first one I remember was a guy named Buck Hommel, and I played for the West End Colts, and Buck was our football coach, and our high school coaches set up this Little League program, and we had 4 teams, West End, East End, Hilton's, and Weber City.
Right.
And we were the Colts, the Redskins, Rams, and the Packers.
So it was like St. Mary's, Kingsland, Woodbine.
Yeah.
The Cowboys and all them guys. Okay.
And, you played where you lived, and, we had a certain plays that the high school ran, and we couldn't deviate from them. It was even if the fullback ran outside of the tackle, you got a 5-yard penalty.
Oh, so this is where your coaching philosophy probably came from. Okay.
But he was my football coach. I had a guy, and gosh, his name escapes me, that was my baseball coach, and basketball I don't even remember, but I just always kind of loved football.
Right.
But I had a really good experience. Played Little League football from the time I was 6 until I got into middle school.
Okay.
And, there wasn't an age groups. We just were all on the same team, Just the little guys didn't get to play much. But, when our middle school was a junior high. And had some good coaches. And my high school coach was a guy named Harry Fry.
Okay.
And Coach Fry, when he retired, was the winningest coach in Virginia history. And so, certainly he had a huge impact on me.
Wow.
He was a really, really good person. Wow. And, again, I was really fortunate, Calvin. I had some great coaches along the way that just, I knew early that's what I wanted to do because I just respected them and loved them so much.
So you were All-American in Virginia, right?
I wasn't even all West End, So,
but you end up going to college, though, right?
I did.
Where did you go?
I went to what at the time was a Division III school called Emory and Henry.
Okay.
And they'd been an NAIA school and had just dropped to Division III. And so I went there, and first year I actually had a coach that had just finished coaching with the New York Jets and Lou Holtz. He was on Lou Holtz's staff.
Listen, I got to stop you right there. Lou Holtz is my all-time favorite coach.
Yeah,
when he was at
too.
Notre Dame.
Mine too.
When he went to South Carolina, he just went for the money. But I saw him at what he did at Arkansas with Gary Anderson. Then he went to Minnesota with Ricky Foggy. And then he went to Notre Dame and had the first black quarterback I know at
Tony Rice.
And he was a great coach. Yes. I love that guy, yes.
Yeah, well, Jerry Kirk took a lot of things from Lou Holtz, but he forgot a lot of things that Lou Holtz did too. So, he came in and I guess he thought we had a lot of dead weight on our team, but he liked to kill us, But I was a freshman, and he liked the freshmen,
Yeah.
And so, I had some.
I like that coach. Why did he like the freshmen? Tell me why.
Well,
did he come in with your class?
Yes.
And explain that part, because I think even in listening to this, if any kids watching this, when new coaches come in, they're probably going to go with the younger guys because of what reason? Well,
they feel like they're theirs. They got to pick them. I was, this happened today. Don't know if I'm going to get off on this tangent, but, when the Schottenheimer guy got hired with the Cowboys today. he was Bryce's coach at Georgia.
Yeah, and his guy came with him.
Yeah, he brought a guy in from Virginia.
And cost the whole coaching staff their jobs. It is what it is.
I remember talking with him on the phone about Bryce, and I'm not a fan of his really, because I just felt like he didn't give Bryce a fair shake. And again, because he wasn't his guy, so to speak.
Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm not going to defend him, but I think this, coming from the pros, he was used to. He's not a teaching coach, so the guy who knew the philosophies and knew the game when he put it out there to test them. Yeah. He was the guy. He was the smartest guy in the room as far as that, and so he went with that. He went with the safest bet, not the best bet, but he went with the safest bet for him. And he cost the whole coaching staff their jobs. Yeah.
Well, I always said if Bobo had stayed, Bryce would have been the starter, and be in the NFL playing right now probably. But things work out for a reason. But Jerry Kirk at Emory and Henry. Back to that was, he was crazy. I mean, he did some stuff that just is unbelievable. And
what? What? Is he dead now?
I don't know.
Okay, I hope we don't get a.
No, he probably is, but I liked him,
right?
But I didn't know any better,
right?
I was a freshman in college. I thought, well, this is
what
everybody
we do.
does.
This is what we do.
But we got beat at Maryville College, our second game. We were on the road, and we got beat down there. And he turned around in the fourth quarter, and we were ahead, and they were driving. And he said, if we lose this game, we're going to practice after. And we did. And we practiced for about 3 hours before we left.
That's illegal.
Well, it wasn't back then. It may have been. But anyway, he took us out on their practice field, and their players had gone to eat, come back to the dorms. They're hanging out on the balconies, hollering at us, throwing stuff. And we're out there, and he's killing us. And got worse. We were playing Hampton Sydney at home, and he got mad at halftime. We were down 21-7. He took us to the practice field instead of the locker room. And I kid you not, I ran 8 gassers during halftime. He took the ones, and they did set inside drill, and the DBs, receivers, and everybody else ran gassers.
Wow.
Then he took the 2s, and everybody else ran 4 more gassers.
So did y'all win the game?
No, we got beat 42-7. so I figured out that wasn't a good tactic.
That wasn't the way to work. So was he there your whole career?
He got fired that year.
The first year you were there?
Yeah. So a guy named Larry Bells took over, and Coach Bells was an Emory and Henry legend.
Okay.
He almost made the Cowboys.
Wow.
Back in their heyday, he made it to the last cut.
Right.
And he was a good guy. We didn't have many resources or anything like that, but we didn't win many games. In high school, we almost never got beat.
Right.
In college, we almost never won.
And then it's hard, yeah.
And so I got to see the good and the bad pretty early in my life.
You didn't like the bad, did you?
No, I did not like that at all. It about killed me. I told my mom and dad after the first game, we got killed. And I said, look, I can't do this. I'm coming home. And, to their credit, my dad goes,
no, you can't come home.
You ain't quitting. He goes, you're going to finish it.
That's what's good.
Yes, sir. So luckily I didn't.
And then 4 years later, as a 4-year starter and a team captain. So, I mean, you got through that first year. Everything else was easy. How did your teams progress? Did they get better?
I don't even remember. We got a little bit better my sophomore year.
You older than I thought, Coach.
Well, there wasn't a lot of success there, but we didn't win a lot. I think our best record during my time might have been 4-7 or something. But again, so many great memories, so many great friends,
right? So
many great teammates, and the guy that probably shaped my career more than any coach or teacher I ever had was a guy named Fred Self. And I've had some great mentors.
What was he?
He was actually our offensive line coach,
wow,
and offensive coordinator. So I wasn't around him a lot in practice, but he was just a great person. He became my academic advisor and kept me from flunking out.
Wow.
He asked me, and you've probably heard this before, I've said it before, but when I met with him my first time, when he became my academic advisor my sophomore year, he looked at me and he said, he called me Herron. He goes, Herron, he goes, are you dumb or lazy? Or stupid. He said, are you stupid or lazy? And I said, Coach, I don't really understand that question.
Wow.
And he goes, from the looks of your grades, you don't understand a lot of questions, son. And, but he convinced me that I could do better. And just became the guy that got me through college because he stayed on me in a positive way.
Right.
And the first A I ever made was in his class. And I said, I kind of like this. He taught statistics. And so, I was so fortunate to have guys like that in my growing up stages.
Right. And so after your football career, you decided to go into college. And your first, I think you were a GA at Tennessee Tech?
That's it. We had a coach on our staff. We actually had a coach on our staff at Emory that had been at Tennessee Tech.
Right.
And he helped, and there was a coach on Tennessee Tech staff that had played at Emory and Henry.
So you had connections.
Yeah, and I remember literally sitting at home over the Christmas break, and I sent out probably 250 letters to colleges all over the United States.
Trying to get on.
And nothing, not a single reply. And we go back after, spring break or whatever, and I was telling him, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'm going to go to high school and do all that. And he made a phone call, and next thing you know, I went down there, and the guy that was the head coach was named Don Wade. He had played at Clemson, was a legend at Clemson, and a great guy. And he called me the Virginian, the whole time. But, he was really good guy, and took care of me. My biggest duty there was I'd drive and swap film and go get them lunch every day. Yeah, that was about the extent of it. I ran the scout team, the offensive scout team. But Coach Wade got fired that year.
Wow.
And interesting sidebar here, when he got fired, we all got fired. So,
yes.
I'd been a coach for about 9 months, and really not that long, I guess, and lost my job. And the guy they brought in was named Gary Darnell. And I tried for 3 weeks to get in to see him. I'd go every day to his office, and they would tell me every day, well, he's busy or he's not in, whatever. And I just got, I told the secretary, I said, listen, I know he's in there. And I said, I'm not going to leave until you let me talk to me.
Right.
And so I sat there a couple of hours, and then, finally he said he'll see you. And so I go in, and, he was writing something, and he just kind of glanced up at me. He goes, what position you play? I said, well, I don't play. He goes, I didn't think you did. Okay. And I said, well, Coach, I was a GA last year, and, it's a 2-year program. And I said, I'd certainly like to do that again and help you this year. And he looked up for a second. He goes, I got my own people.
Wow.
And that's it.
Wow.
The meeting over, and I'm out of a job. So I made up my mind to finish my graduate school in a year. I accelerated the process, and I got offered a high school job with Jimmy Dorsey at Paulding County, and I decided, well, because that college route now, I found out in a hurry.
Yeah, crazy.
One day you got a
It's
job,
crazy.
next day you're running, and most of those guys had been there 15, 16 years,
Man.
and they never worked again.
So were you married then?
No, Inca and I got engaged that spring.
Okay.
We started dating that spring, got engaged that summer.
Wow.
And got married the next spring. So
she went with you to Paulding County?
She did. Well, she actually, no, that year she was still at Tennessee Tech.
So y'all started at Paulding County, or did you go to McEachern? How did that
Started
work?
at Paulding County for 1 year.
Okay,
and then
1 year.
Coach Dorsey got the job at McEachern.
Yeah.
And when he went to McEachern, I went with him. And like I said, Inca and I had gotten married that spring.
So let's talk about McEachern. I have a couple of friends that know you, Tony Hall and Anthony Kluntz. They went at McEachern, and so when they were like, Coach Herron, y'all, Coach, I was like, yeah, we know him. You were young then. This was probably in 86. Were you there in 86?
Yes, that was probably our first year there.
Okay, yeah, 86. So McEachern at the time was what, the largest school in the state of Georgia, right?
You know, I'm not sure, but
I think so.
We probably weren't far from it.
Yeah, I think y'all were the largest school in the state of Georgia. And what kind of coach was Coach Dorsey?
Well, he was great, and he, you know, he is my mentor. He is my second father, you know, and just phenomenal person, coach. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but you know, when we went to McEachern, they hadn't had a winning season in 19 years.
The Indians.
Yeah. They hadn't won their opening game in 15 years.
Wow.
And, you know, Jimmy went in there and, you know, he's old school now. You know, he was old school and he whipped them into shape.
And I'm going to say this. Back then, I know for a fact, because I was living up there from like 89 to what, it was bad up there. It was bad. Powder Springs, Marietta, Wheeler, those teams there, they were hating each other. They were fighting and shooting and everything else up there.
Well, you know, Coach Dorsey just had a way with kids, and you know, he let me be his defensive coordinator because nobody else wanted to do it. I think, you know,
your first year.
Well, it was my second year.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was just, you know, I learned so much, and he was very helpful because he was a defensive coach first.
Right.
But, you know, with that said, we upset Marietta in the opening game. They had been the region champs the year before, maybe made it to the semis or something the year before.
Did you coach against Eric Zaire?
Well, my first year as a head coach, we beat Eric Zaire in the playoffs.
Oh,
upset them. Yeah, that's one of my claim to fame there. A little later on down the road, but, you know, we wound up going 7-3 that first year.
Wow.
And it was no looking back. We didn't lose a regular season game, I don't think, for 4 years after that.
Wow.
But we always fell short in the playoffs.
So he got the guys to buy in.
No, he did. He did. And we had great resources. You know, if you've been to McEachern High School, you don't want for anything there now. It is a public school with a very large private endowment.
So you were there for how long?
5 years.
5 years. Then after that, you became a head coach.
I did.
Where at
Walton, ironically. And
Rivals.
You know. And,
how long were you at Walton?
1 year.
Oh, okay.
So
why?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll give you the short version. You know, first of all, I'm going to say this: we started 0-2. And we got killed by Brookwood, who had played for the state championship the year before in our opener, got beat by Wheeler in our second game, and then we won 2. And then we lost the next game, and Calvin, we were up 20-6, had the ball first and goal on the 4-yard line with 5 minutes left in the game.
Wow.
And got beat 27-20. And we lost 2 really good players, one with a knee injury that night, one in a car wreck.
Wait a minute. Let's go back to before that. 20 to what?
20-6.
With 5 minutes left.
And us with the ball on the 4-yard line.
So break that down. I'm sorry.
Have to?
I want to hear that. Yeah, I definitely want to know that. That's incredible.
We ran a play on first down, if I remember correctly. On second down, we had a guy jump off sides. We were in motion, so backed us up. And so stupidly, I called what was 81 keep pass, which, you know, was tight end in the
that's why we don't
corner route.
That's why at Camden they did not throw the ball because of this scenario right here. Now we know.
Well, it did hurt because it got picked in the end zone. And they scored quick. We got the ball back. We ran guard trap.
2014.
Yeah,
okay.
We ran guard trap, busted it. A guy's going to score. And he wasn't real fast, but he was a good player. But he got hit from the side. Ball shot up in the air. They catch it in the air and run it in for a touchdown.
21
or whatever, 21-20, I guess. No, I don't remember. But anyway, we're, get it again. And we're, trying to come back. Now we're behind a point, I guess, 21-20.
Yeah, 21-20.
And I think we threw a pick and they ran it back. And
that's what you call buzzard luck.
No,
they call that buzzard luck.
The moral of that story was I literally when that night, I can remember. I remember sitting on the steps in our house just crying. I was like, man, what am I doing? I'm in the wrong business. You know, I'd gotten a phone call that kid had almost got killed in a car wreck. And you know, I'm just sitting there going, it's just too much for me, God. You know, I can't do it.
That's great, because let me tell you why. The name of this podcast is Off the Floor. So that's one of your get up off the floor moments. How did you overcome that with all the doubt that you had at that time? Who and what helped you like get up and get this done? Well, because after this, your career shoots off, like really shoots off.
Well, not like a rocket. It was a little slow progression.
But you know what I mean? Because at that time, you could have turned back and said, forget this. I'm going to find another way to keep this woman satisfied.
Yeah. Well, you know, we were 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
We had lost some really good players. You know, the parents, you know, Walton parents were a tough crowd. You know,
right.
They had been a successful program and had one down year, and I got the job. But, you know, my parents, you know, they didn't allow me to quit anything.
Right.
I mean, that never, you know, that wasn't in our vocabulary. That helped. You know, Jimmy helped because, you know, he kept saying, look, man, you're going to be okay. You're doing the right things. But the good Lord helped, because there was a lot of praying and a lot of soul searching. And, you know, it got worse. You know, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. And, you know, that week we went to practice on Monday, you know, after losing those kids. And that one kid was in the hospital and, you know, intensive care. And we didn't know if he was going to make it. And we were having a terrible practice that Monday. And they, you know, they just didn't want to be there. And I got mad. And I told them, I said, look, I can't coach this. I can't. I said, go home. I said, and if you're serious about it, come back tomorrow. Yeah. And I, you know, ironically, 3 of the seniors on that team I talked to this weekend.
I was just about to ask you, did you talk to these kids? That
group, and, you know, last year when we got beat at Walton, or 2 years ago, whatever it's been now, you know, there were about 15 of them that came to that game. I remember. And the 3 of them that I talked to the most, I actually talked to 4 this weekend, but I told them all, if you all hadn't have been such a special class, and they put up with me because I was learning on the fly. Mm-hmm. And if they hadn't have done that, I was going to get out. My father-in-law had offered me a job running a boat dock.
Wow.
And I was thinking that boat dock looks a whole lot better than getting your butt beat every Friday night, you know.
Right.
But they didn't. And they came back to practice on Tuesday. And we won that week, and we won for the next 7 weeks.
Wow.
And wound up beating Marietta and Eric Zier in the opening round of the playoffs.
Wow.
And he had thrown 1 interception the entire year, and he threw 5 against us, I believe, that night. So,
what year was that for him?
It was his.
It might have been his senior year.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Wow, that's awesome.
I don't know if you remember the name George O'Leary.
Oh yeah. Georgia Tech. Coach
O'Leary's son played at our rival school, and so, you know, he was at Georgia Tech at the time. He played at Pope. His son played at Pope, and that was right down the road from Walton.
Very good.
And Coach O'Leary had helped me a lot when I was at McEachern, you know, because he was a great defensive coach.
Right.
And I would go to him and ask questions and stuff. And then that year, you know, he showed me some stuff, which everybody does now.
Right.
But back then, you know, nobody was playing nickel and, you know, 2-man under, you know, stuff like that. And Coach O'Leary was teaching me that. Well,
we come out. You tricked him.
Yeah, we came out and we said, we're not going to let him throw short. And we rushed 3, sometimes 2 guys.
Take everything out.
Because they had such good athletes. Yeah. If they'd have caught it, we were in trouble.
Yeah.
And he, you know, he got frustrated and he threw some picks and then we kept the ball away from him. Our first drive was 16 plays in 10 minutes and scored. You know,
that's awesome. So from there, you only coached that 1 year?
Well, I did. And yeah, the reason I said it, you know, and it was the hardest thing, one of the hardest things I've ever done. To this day, I can still remember having to tell those kids. But I, on a whim, applied at Cedar Shoals. And Cedar Shoals had, the year before, had beaten or tied a close game something with Clark Central. and Clark Central had played for the state championship.
Against Valdosta.
Yeah. And I think Valdosta won, but it was a close game or something, maybe tied. But anyway, I had made the comment that a Cobb County team had never won a state championship.
Right.
And I made the comment to somebody there. I said, look, I don't believe they ever will, because we had some great teams at McEachern.
Right.
But we would always get beat in the playoffs.
Right.
And everybody else did too. I mean, Walton had a great team one year before I went there, and they got beat by LaGrange, and which, was just a crazy game. But I didn't think you could win a state championship in Cobb County.
Was that at the highest level too, right? That was at the highest level.
At that time, everybody there was at the highest. They were all in the large class.
Now I got a question. We're going to stop. We're going to flip this right here. So now, like, it's kind of flipped. Like, the county schools and the rural schools, they're more at a disadvantage. It's like the city schools, the city of Atlanta schools, the Gwinnett County, the Cobb County kids look like they have the advantage now.
They do. And, that opens up a whole nother ball of wax there. But, the proximity there, the population there, the ability to change schools.
The economic. Yeah. Really is economics, because I think even here you could probably do that, but you have to make the real move. If you know what I'm saying, you have to move in. You have to move your whole family, and if you don't have that, the economics to satisfy that family that's moving, then it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree completely. I mean, you look at Milton. I mean, this offseason, they've had a 5-star quarterback from Florida move in. They've had 2 4-star guys from Wisconsin move in.
Offensive lineman?
No, one's a receiver, one's a running back. And they're both got offers from everybody. Now, how does that happen? I mean, how do you get those type kids? I mean, but that's high school football today, and that's another subject.
Okay. Well, let's go from there to you at Cedar Shoals?
Yes.
Okay, Cedar Shoals, how did that go? How many years were you there?
4.
4 years.
And it was a great experience. And, it was a tough place.
Coach, you be in charge for that water also.
Okay.
Just know. Same
well,
charge.
How many questions have you asked me?
Charge.
I'm keeping up with it.
We got it. Yeah.
So the water is what you put out. Well,
that's how
it's worth it.
How many sips did you take?
It's worth it.
How many sips do you take? They go 3. There we go.
Cedar Shoals, I learned to coach kids that, Walton, everybody at Walton drove a Mercedes-Benz to school. At Cedar Shoals.
Oh, I know where Cedar Shoals at.
Yeah, Cedar Shoals on the east side of Athens.
Yeah, I know where it's at.
And those kids there were they needed football. They needed me. Mm-hmm. They needed my coaches. And it's one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had as a coach.
Is the Gresham Disco right down the road from? I think it's right down the road. The Gresham Disco.
I never went in there. I never went in there.
No, you couldn't have went in there, Coach. Without an escort. You went in there.
I could have. They love me, But, I mean, we had to do things at Cedar Shoals. Like, we had an old van. And we would circle Athens on
finding
the
my
bypass
kids
and bring them to weight training in the summer. Right. And I still remember, I laughed about this all the time, but one of my coaches, a guy named Chuck Goddard, he was with me the whole time. And Chuck, it was his day to drive. And he was late, and I was not happy. You know me, I don't like late stuff. So Chuck pulls in. It's about 5-10 minutes after we started, and he pulls in, and all them kids pile out of that van. And I walked from the weight room. I went through the gate, and I come around. And I was just going to give him a piece of my mind because he was late, and I got around there. About that time, the door, I'm talking about the big old sliding door of the van, just falls out in the parking lot. And Chuck goes, I don't want to hear it today. He goes, this thing fell out on the bypass.
I had to go pick it up and bring it back.
So it was stuff like that all the time. But those kids, again, I'm extremely close to a bunch of those kids to this day.
How good were your teams there?
Well, they were better players and teams than I was a coach. Because honestly, if I'd have been a better coach, and I've
At that
told them,
time.
if I'd have been a better coach, it was my second year as a head coach.
Yeah.
We would have won the state championship
You
in
had that-
1990,
you had that much talent.
I think. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
We got beat by Clark 21-20 in the opener because I went for 2, with a minute and a half to go.
I like that.
And then we got beat by Southwest DeKalb in the second round, and we had 7 turnovers, and we lost to Southwest DeKalb, and they played Valdosta for the state championship that year.
They were stacked then. Who was the coach at South?
Coach Godfrey.
Yeah.
And, that year, my first year and my fourth year.
So that was your second year
as a head coach.
when you played Southwest DeKalb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really, and I mean this with all sincerity, I just wasn't good enough as a coach to know all the stuff, the experience that, the playoffs and handling it and stuff. And, but those kids were good enough. They were special now. And they bought into lifting weights, and they if you cared for them, they'd run through a wall for you. And, some great kids. And again, I've heard from a lot of them this weekend too, which makes me feel great.
So after that run, where did you go?
Well, at Cedar Shoals, I said the coaching was great. Mm-hmm. The teaching day, not so good. I mean, I was breaking up a fight dang near every day. I ruined 2 or 3 dress shirts with blood all over them, and it wasn't our football guys.
Right.
It was just the school.
Right.
And, it was just kind of out of control other than when we had them in football.
Right.
And I just I got tired of it, and I was looking a little bit.
What years was that, Coach? What year?
90 through 93, I guess.
Wow. Yeah.
And Calvin, I'm going to throw this out, not that it matters, but, Cedar Shoals, the year before I got there, I think, had a kid named Dothell Edwards. You may remember Dothell, I don't know, but he high jumped 7'6" in high school. Was on the Olympic team, won a medal, I think, in the Olympics. He was at Cedar Shoals.
Wow.
Across town had a kid named Clark Central, had a kid named Brian Tabor that triple jumped 53, almost 54 feet in high school.
Yeah, they had some athletes.
So, that city, man, but it just, I didn't, my principal and I didn't really get along.
Yeah.
And, I had a guy, George Quarles was on my staff, George Quarles has the best winning percentage of any high school coach in the history of high school football.
I know that name.
George was great. He was at Maryville High School for years and years. And now he's coaching at Austin Peay now. But George was one of my assistants, and he had a difficulty trying to get certified, and my principal wouldn't work with him, and George had to leave. Just kill me. But again, I digress to talk about that. But I started looking a little bit. And I got offered a job in Virginia that was 20 minutes from my parents. And I took it. And it was called Virginia High Bearcats. And I went up there. I actually taught summer school.
But you never coached there.
No. The superintendent, during the interview, superintendent, principal, and the athletic director, who I'd gone to college with, were in on the interview. And I told them at the time, I said, my wife and I both teach. I said, it's a pay cut for me to come to Virginia. I said, but I'm okay with that. But, my wife's got to have a job. Oh, yeah, Coach, no problem. Well, over the summer, we found out trying to buy a house, and needed proof of employment. Nobody ever told us, but we found out that she didn't have a job. That Inca didn't have a job. And my athletic director had left, taken a job in Northern Virginia. The principal had a heart attack and retired. So the only guy left was the superintendent. Well, he was out of town all summer. I couldn't, back in those days, wasn't no cell phones. I couldn't get to him. And anyway, it was bad. I mean, it was just, but I wound up, Jimmy Dorsey rescued me again, him and Ralph Williams, who was the principal. Mr. Williams called and said, Jeff, if you want to come back here,
finish up.
He said, look, we'll have a job for you in Inca tomorrow.
Wow.
And so I went and told the guy, I said, look, you promised my wife a job. And he goes, well, we said we would try. And I said, no, sir, you said she had a job. I mean, it wasn't any doubt in my mind. So anyway, the next day he said, well, we got it worked out. I said, well, all right, good, because I want to stay. That's good. He goes, but she'll only be teaching half day. And I said, that's not what you promised. And he goes, well, that's all we can do right now. And I said, that's not what you promised. Well, anyway, another night goes by, and I said, look, either you're going to fix it or I'm leaving. And I don't think they thought, I mean, we were getting ready to start practice.
Going to leave, yeah.
And, Jimmy was still calling me because he just had a secondary coach leave. It just took another job in the summer. And so he's like, Jeff, man, come on back. So I went back to McEachern and left Inca and the kids because they were starting practice. Right. And Inca and the kids and my dad and one of his friends packed that. We had a little rental house.
And got on
they packed it up, and I went back to McEachern and lived in a house on campus during that fall and was an assistant and happy as I've ever been.
What was the name of that school?
Virginia High.
I'm finna look up some of those kids and see what they think about you.
I took them to camp that summer. And we went to camp, and I'm telling you, we were going to be good.
For real?
Yeah, they had some skilled kids, and they were good kids, and they didn't deserve that. But I just had a hard time.
Yeah, they force you.
When a man promises you something and then lies about it, well, 3 months later, he got arrested for embezzling money and all kinds of stuff and got fired. So, the good Lord took care of me there again.
So you returned to McEachern for 1 year.
One season. As soon as it was over, the Wheeler job came open, and I went there. Oh,
you coached at Wheeler too?
Yeah, 2 years.
What years were that?
95 and 96, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, great years. I had a great principal, a guy named Doc Holliday.
Yeah. And, so you were there when my boy was there. Sharif Abdul-Rahim.
Yes.
She was, like I said, the rivalry between them and Marietta. And it was heated.
Oh yeah, basketball games now were
It was heated.
But that's one of the reasons that I left. Not the main one, but Doug Lipscomb was the head coach, and Doug was phenomenal. Phenomenal. A guy named Dave McDonald was the baseball coach, and Dave's in the Hall of Fame, and Doug is, and
football wasn't that good.
I was competing with them, and it was hard. And Doug, he made no bones about it. If
he the man,
these guys here, they're just basketball players, Jeff.
Yeah, you can't get them out there.
Yeah, I couldn't. And but that wasn't why I left, because we were getting pretty good.
Yeah,
had good kids and all. But when we had gone to McEachern, Calvin, we were living in that house on campus, and I loved it personally. I'd have lived there forever, but Inca wanted her own house.
Right.
So we found a lot in Walton County, and we built a house. And it was like, 10 or 15 minutes from McEachern.
But
when I went to Wheeler,
it
was
45 minutes.
Yeah, maybe an hour with traffic.
You had to go through Lost Mountain and all that.
You had to go through Marietta. Cross town,
all the way across.
And so for 2 years, I made that drive, and I would get up in the mornings and leave the house by 5 a.m. And I wouldn't get home to 8, 9, 10, depending on, the time of the year. And I had always, with my kids, I'd always come and get them, take them to practice, take them to basketball games, track meets and stuff. And I just couldn't do it. And so, it was killing our family. Right. And so the Oconee County job came open.
Okay.
And it was a terrible football job. The principal, I loved him, but he had no idea about football.
No
Nothing.
backing.
I mean, he just didn't know.
Right.
He didn't know what it took, And
how many years you were there, Coach?
At Wheeler, 2. At Oconee, 3. And
so you turned them around in 3 years?
Well, the stars aligned. I'll just tell you, a lot of things went right. But I went to Oconee because we had lived in Oconee when I was coaching at Cedar Shoals. We'd gone to church there. So I knew that was going to be a good place for my family.
Yeah.
And that's why we went there. I never thought we would. I thought, if I can go 500 there, it'll be a miracle.
Won the state championship there.
Well, we had
Tyson Browning.
Yeah. Tony Taylor.
Linebacker, right?
Yeah.
At Georgia.
Yeah.
Both of them went to Georgia.
Yeah. Had J.T. Cape, who went to Duke, had Jeremy Phillips, who went to Georgia Tech. I'm trying to think. There was another one. Clayton Matthews was our quarterback. Played for his dad at James Madison. Alan Harrison was a receiver, played at James Madison. And those kids, it just, the first year we went 8-4. And, I told the parents at the first meeting, I said, don't make plans for Thanksgiving because we're going to be playing. And they all just laughed. Yeah, sure, buddy. And we did. Somehow we did.
Wow.
But the wing tee helped us. I mean, nobody knew how to defend it. And then, by the next year, Tony became a freshman, and
right.
Tyson was a sophomore, and Clayton his dad had taken a job at Georgia, and he came in, and that senior went, by the time their third year, they could play. They could play. So that was a lot of fun.
How was it winning your first one? I mean, winning the first one, how did it feel? Did you?
Well, I really felt like we had a chance the second year, but we got beat at Dalton. We had a terrible game, and one of the things you learn as a coach, we had stopped and eat at one of the steakhouses. Yeah, buffet.
Yeah.
Kids had eaten so much food on the way over there, we were lethargic.
Couldn't even play.
Yeah, and Clayton threw like 4 picks, I think, and we fumbled a few times and got beat. And so they were hungry the next year, and it was just almost like, we knew, I think they knew, the coaches knew, the community knew, we had a really good team coming back. So there was a lot of pressure not to mess it up. And I can remember I had a guy, you may know this name, Matt Braswell. Matt's son, Bo, played for us. He was a sophomore defensive end. Matt played at Americus, the team that beat Camden County.
With my cousin, Michael Harris.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Matt...
They only gave up 1 touchdown the whole year. Yeah.
Well, Matt's son was on our team, and Matt was always, around and stuff. And he came in one weekend, and he said, Jeff, he said, I want to talk to you. He goes, I'm going to tell you something. And he said, it might hurt your feelings. And he goes, that's not my intent. He goes, but I'm trying to help. He goes, you're not the same guy you were last year. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you act like, you're coaching under pressure. And I thought about it. And this was about the 5th or 6th game, something like that. And, it hit home with me, and I kind of, I started relaxing and, believing in them.
I should have told you that a couple of times.
Yeah. And the kids were good enough. I mean, we really just didn't have to. If we stayed out of their way, they were going to be pretty dang good.
Wow.
So, yeah, that one was really special. That staff, I'm very, very close to them to this day. But we won it at home, Calvin. And that, we won like on our home field. Yeah. We got to celebrate all night and tear the goalpost down, all that kind of stuff. It was good.
Tell me this. So how did you leave there? How did these people here in Camden County get you?
Well, it was not easy to win at Oconee.
Right.
And I had a person tell me one time, said the Jan Kemp thing at Georgia, Oconee County was very much into to all that kind of stuff. And, it wasn't easy to coach there. Now, we had great players and all that, but, my staff there was the lowest paid staff in our region.
Yeah, it's hard.
And I wasn't making a whole lot of money myself. And, there were just things that I had to fight all the time to get stuff that I felt like I needed. Now, I had a real good principal and had a real good AD, and they helped, and it got better. But I knew it was going to be hard to sustain success there. And I had got asked to come and interview at Carrollton. And Ben Scott had just died. If you remember Ben, they had won it, and he had died of liver disease or something. And they wanted you to come in there and keep everybody on his staff, do everything exactly the same. And I just said, look, guys, I love Ben.
That's hard to duplicate.
Yeah, I can't do
I ain't
this.
doing that.
And so I was content at Oconee. I was fine. Well, my superintendent at the time was an acting superintendent. And I found out later the man had brain cancer. And so I don't know if I had something to do with it or whatever, but he wrote me just a scathing letter about going to interview with them.
Oh, wow.
And it was bad. I still have it because it bothered me so much, I kept it. But I remember I called my wife, and I told her, I said, we're, I don't know if we're going to go to Carrollton.
But we ain't
I said,
staying
but
here.
we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
And literally that day in the mail, I got a big old manila envelope from Camden County High School. And Greg Reed had written a letter, and he had sent it to, I don't know how many people, but I know he sent it to everybody that won state championships that year. But he had sent that out, and it was talking about Camden County and the program and the area and all this. I opened the thing up, and I remember telling my wife, I said,
You're going to look.
I said, hey, I told her this. I said, it's at the beach. Nothing else would go down and, hang out at the beach, the weekend. Little did I know it wasn't a beach in Camden County, but except Cumberland, I guess. So we came down, visited, and, the one of the things that happened at Oconee County was, and again, they promised me they were going to give our assistants a raise.
Right.
So my AD, who's a great friend of mine still to this day, he came in. He said, Jeff, got good news and bad news. He goes, the good news is they're going to give all your coaches a raise. I said, all right, what's the bad news? He
We're
goes,
going to cut you.
no, he said, they're going to take it out of the playoff money y'all made, and they're going to use the playoff money to pay their raises. And I said, well, John, how's that going to work next year if we don't make it to the playoffs or something? Are they going to take it away from me? He goes, I don't know. And I said, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. But anyway, we came here to Camden, and Highway 15 runs right through Oconee County.
Right.
And we lived right off of it. We got on Highway 15. And it rained the entire time. And we stayed on Highway 15 all the way to Folkestone, Georgia.
Yep.
And then got on 40 and came into Camden County. And I promise you, it rained so hard I could barely see to drive. And so we couldn't see anything. And we got here and we went to Applebee's and we sat down and ate. And when we came out of Applebee's, it had stopped raining and the sun had popped out. And this is a true story. She goes, well, where's the school at from here? And I turned and I looked, and there's a big rainbow
over the school.
And I said, it's got to be right over there, honey.
That's where it was.
So we drove in that direction, came through the back way from Applebee's,
saw
past Camden Middle, and pulled up. And I saw that stadium, and I was like, I like this. And, Mr. Blunt and Coach Reed and Edwin Davis. Once Edwin Davis got his hooks into me, there was no going back. And, I liked everything they said. Everything that I was battling at Oconee County for.
They were trying to get it. You can have it.
Yeah, we can do that. Get everybody in weight training? Sure, no problem. What period you want it, want to hire these coaches? Okay. And I'm sitting there going, oh, my gosh, this is really the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And, that I've said it many times, but it's worth repeating that I got here at exactly the right time.
Right time, yeah.
Because everybody
was hungry,
wanted the same thing.
The
and
whole
we're
community.
Pulling in the same direction.
The whole community.
And, it took us a little while. I mean, it wasn't just instant success, but, it was.
Coach, I can remember, like, for the first 2 years, like, I drove Coach to the games. Coach Davis, I drove him to the games, and coming back, he would give it to you. He said, "I'm calling him Monday morning." He wanted to throw the ball so bad. He wanted to throw the ball so bad. But once you won it, oh man, he was like, "Calvin, what can we say?" No, we can. I can say. But,
I loved Edwin Davis, and after we won that. After the first time we made it to the semis, he wrote me one of the nicest letters. I still have that letter too.
Brookwood?
He really, he was a great man. You know that.
So, Coach, that first year, I think that was the most talented team. When I say talent, they hadn't bought into the wing T, but as far as, man, you had like two lines that averaged like 6'4", 300. You had backup players that were like that was a talented squad.
Oh, it was. Now, we were having growing pains because of a new offense, a new defense. didn't have the coaches that I had later. You
Right.
know, we got better, maybe, and not that they were bad. They just didn't know
What
my
you were
system
trying to do,
and
yeah.
stuff. You know, but you know, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize that, you know, we got beat by Mount Zion in the first round. It was the worst possible draw we could get, because Mount Zion is the team we had beaten the year before at Oconee for the state championship.
Was that the two Douglas boys?
No, that was later. That was
the
later.
next year.
That was actually the third year.
Jonesboro, maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but Jackie Green, who was the coach at Mount Zion, was a heck of a football coach. They were a wing T team as well. Well, he knew how to defend us,
Right.
you know, and he knew how to attack. I mean, we played the same defense at Oconee, and they beat us. And you know, they had a really good player that made some plays, ran a kickoff back. We'd taken the lead there in the fourth quarter with very little time left, and they run a kickoff back, and then he picks off a pass and runs it back, same number 10.
Yeah.
But had we played somebody else in the first round,
We went further.
I think we would have, because Mount Zion went the next week and beat Valdosta to death. They beat them like 35-10 or something.
Yeah.
And I think they got beaten in the semis by Harrison maybe that year. So they made it to the semis. So we ran into a good team. But, you know, Calvin, I don't mean this in any way bad, but the thing that I remember about our kids back then, if we were playing somebody they had played before, they believed in themselves. They thought they could win. But the moment we played somebody that wasn't familiar to them,
They started questioning.
yes. And, you know, there was a turning point that next spring. I felt like we went to a weightlifting meet at Valdosta. And, you know, I mean, I knew our kids were strong as all get out. I could tell. And, you know, they got after it in the weight room. We were doing a good job in there. And we're walking down the hallway. They had the weightlifting meet in Valdosta's gym at the high school.
I think I remember the story.
And we're walking down the hallway to that school. And Greg Woods, he's walking beside me. And he looks at me. He goes, Coach, this is just like a high school just like ours.
That's it.
I said, Greg, what did you think it was? Coach, it's Valdosta, you know, and so I scheduled Valdosta for a scrimmage, I think that fall. And we went over there and scrimmaged them and, you know, held our own. It was a scrimmage.
Right.
But I think that kind of convinced the kids, you know, that might have been after the second year. I don't remember exactly. But, you know, yeah, we got beat that second year. We went 10-0 and got beat in the first round. Yeah. And you talk about hard to handle now. I mean, I thought I'm fixing to get fired because Edwin Davis had told me. He said, look, we're successful in the regular season. He goes, but we want to have success in the playoffs. Yes.
At home.
Yes.
At home.
And, you know, the next year we go undefeated again. But, you know, I can look back. I mean, in that second year, there were plays in that game that we would normally have made.
Right.
We had an interception hit us square in the chest that would have ended the game.
Which you should have just knocked the ball down. We'll go.
Yeah, but I ain't going to call no names. But, you know,
Yes.
But those kids would normally make those plays,
Right,
you know.
right.
Well, the third year, we go undefeated again, and we're in the first round. And that's when Harry Douglas, they came down in that first round. Yeah. And literally, I remember this like it was yesterday. The end of the first quarter, we're down 14-0 or 12-0 or something. But they had scored once. We had fumbled, and Harry Douglas picks it up and runs it in for a touchdown.
The fastest man. Yeah.
And the quarter changed, and we're down 2 scores. And I remember walking down our sidelines, and I can remember, and I don't normally ever hear anything from the stands. I don't know why. I'm not trying to block it out. It's just I don't focus on it.
Right.
But I can remember there was a man yelling and cussing me.
I hope it wasn't me.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think so. But he was holding hands with these 2 little girls, and he is just giving me down the road, hanging over that rail there. And I just remember looking up there, and I remember I said, if we don't win this game, it's over. I'm fired. I'm done. And we came back and won. And Jock Roman took the ball away from them in the fourth quarter, ripped it out, and went and scored.
Yeah.
And then we played really well in the Dome. We should have won that game.
Yeah. That's the year that we went to
Stephenson.
Listen, that's one of the greatest games I've ever seen.
That was,
was
maybe the most talented team.
And the coldest I have ever been in my life.
Yeah, it was cold.
Yeah, it was the coldest I ever been.
It was, they were so talented.
They were.
But our kids,
Luckily, the running back didn't play that night.
Yeah, Craig
Lumpkin. He didn't play, but I mean, and I can remember we were up on them, and the quarterback, Ball.
Yeah. He
ran over somebody in the middle of the field, and he was like, and I was like, uh-oh. Like, this finna be a game. Because he single-handedly, when he did that, he took his team to a whole nother level, which I was amazed by. It was a great game.
You remember they scored with like 2 minutes left and took the lead.
Listen, I was on the sideline. One of the police got me down on the sideline, and I told the offense, I was like, look, the defense held you down. It's your turn. And them boys went straight down the field, man. That was incredible.
We ran guard trap, which you don't think that's a 2-minute drill play, but they were determined rush a pass. We ran that. Then we ran Sally, which is another invite them upfield, and they did it. And then we hit Waggle seam right down the middle and scored. And when we scored, though, I remember telling the coach, God, we scored too soon.
Fast, yeah.
Because they got back down to around midfield or something at the end.
But what I remember about that game more than anything is we had them fourth and something like 4 or 5 times on their last drive. And I was on the sideline, and our crowd was going crazy. And he threw that ball in the end zone, and that boy caught that ball. Man, the whole, my heart came out because it went silent behind me, but they went crazy on the other side. That was probably the best game with fans and everything that I probably ever been to.
Back and forth,
yeah, it was
weather.
It was a great game.
In the field conditions.
Oh, it was terrible.
In the middle.
Because it was frozen, though. It was frozen, and it was all dirt.
We made a decision early in the game, and we kept trying to run everything into the boundary because that's the only place there was any grass. Yeah. And there's a funny story from that one. And we ran, we had a play, a lot of people, the NFL runs it all the time, called jet sweep, whatever, but we called it speed. And we ran that early in the game and handed it to Jarris Williams. And Jarris is coming toward our sideline, and they just, they could fly. They just ate him up.
Clean him up.
And, some joker, he jumped up, and he's pushing on Jarris, and he looked at me, and he goes, man, y'all are slow as, used a few, bad words there and at it. And, I was like, holy cow, man, they can run. Well, by the second quarter, we kind of figured it out a little bit, and we ran sweep to that side. And that same kid, Jarris, just ran him slap over, and he's laying there right on our sideline, about knocked out. And I remember looking down at him, and I go, he don't look so slow now, does he? So that was, that was a good one.
That was a good game. And then from there, you go to the Brookwood game.
Yeah, I
still have questions about the ending of that game. What was the call?
You and me both. So, well, they scored on 4th and 14 or something like that on the last play of overtime.
Right.
In those days, that overtime was still the penetration stuff.
Right.
Which was hard. I still don't really understand it, but it should have never got to that. I mean, we had a chance, and we did something, and I still to this day don't know how it went like this, but we had scored, and we were down 1, and instead of kicking the extra point,
went for 2.
I chose to do the little throw-over play and go for 2. Well, we scored. I think it was Jarris that we threw it to, maybe, but he scored. But they called a penalty for an illegal formation or procedure or something. Well, I was like, okay,
you take the penalty.
Yeah, we can kick it. We either get to score or they got to take the penalty.
Right.
Well, they took the penalty, and then we were going to kick it, And then he came over and said, well, no, you don't get another play. And I went, wait a minute now, you can't have the penalty and take the play away from us. And to this day, I don't know. I had one of the guys on the crew tell me later. He said, "Yeah, we screwed that one up."
Oh, okay,
but
that doesn't do me any good.
No, but we still had a chance. You remember we had a pass and we dropped a pass, and that could have won it at the end. And they faked a punt.
Yeah.
In overtime.
I remember.
And that wasn't a called fake. The kid did it on his own.
Man.
Their coach told me after, a few weeks, whatever, we talked, and he said, I was about to kill the kid, but he did it on his own. And they got down there on 4th and 14 or whatever, 4th and long, and we called timeout. We saw how they lined up, and we called timeout, and we literally told our guys what play they were going to run.
Yeah.
And it was a tight end crossing route, a pick play. And we told them, this is what they've done out of this formation, expect it. But it was a heck of a play, and they executed it great. And, that was a tough one. But, I felt like our kids, we'd gone from getting beat in the first round 2 years to getting beat on the last play of overtime in the semis, that, we were making progress.
And so from there, you go into your 4th year. What happens in the 4th year?
We had some dogs. I'm telling you.
Dogs.
Best defense. The two best defenses I've ever coached was that one in 2016 at Grayson.
Okay.
And I don't know which one I would pick. I would probably pick the Camden one.
So who was on that defense? That was I already know. DJ, Patterson, KP. Oh yeah.
Nub. You had Nub.
Nub was
Jock
crucial.
Roman.
Yes.
You had Garza and Frison.
Yes.
We Emmanuel was playing corner. I think Dalron maybe was the other corner.
Yeah.
We had some players now. We really did, and they played well together.
Well, I think that's the first. Well, I think the team before that lost to Brookwood, they totally bought in, and so that just carried over to the next year.
Oh, no question. You mentioned our first year, how talented we were in my first year. I think the second year.
But that's what I meant. The second year, 2001,
I guess that might have been the most talented team we had, but. They didn't buy in. You couldn't break them. You couldn't break them of their habits. They had habits. They did. It was they could play, but it was a struggle. And again, it's that way no matter where you go.
I say this though, in the playoffs, if you keep running Soup was getting 7 a carry. Woo. Yeah. He was running at that game.
Well, we did. We scored doing that.
I remember.
And then they ran the kickoff back. And that was that haunts me to this day. I kicked it to the wrong guy. But the 2003 team, getting beat like they did in 2002.
Yeah.
They worked their butts off, and they were a lot of fun to coach.
A lot of kids went to college off that team.
Yeah, they were some good ones.
And then from there, man, what's your career at Camden County? How was that? How was your whole Camden first run?
Well, it was good. Calvin, I can't complain at all. I think about it a lot. I think about this a lot that, in 2012, we were really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. But we got beat by Alvin Kamara.
Right. Oh, shoot.
We played some 2010, we got beat by what was that guy's name? Went to Alabama from not Harrison, but Hillcrest. Hillgrove. Hillgrove had the running back that went to Alabama,
and the wide receiver.
So the years that we didn't win it, we were close. And
hey, Coach, we lost to Northside Warner Robins one year. What was that running back?
I don't think we lost to Northside Warner Robins.
We didn't?
I don't think we ever lost to them.
I thought we lost to them at home, and it was a running back. Or we might have beat them.
We got beat by Warner Robins one year at home.
Okay.
But we beat Northside Warner Robins, and they had a really good running back that came from Alaska or something.
Dude was just and they just put him in the Wildcat, and he just ran the ball every time. They threw the ball not one time. I was trying to figure out who that kid was.
That was two games that stand out to me that, were just slobber knockers during my career here was that Northside Warner Robins game in 2008 and the Lowndes game in 2009, which 10-7. And
a lot of them was good. A lot of Lowndes and Camden games were really, really good. Man, well, Coach, I want to talk about some of your players now. Like, who was the best?
Don't ask me that now because I don't know the answer.
No. You don't have to single. You don't have to single it out, but you can give a group of guys. Let's say offensively first. Offensively.
Well,
and you're gonna miss some, and that's okay. And we're not. Listen, don't be hitting me on no part. Don't call me talking about Coach forgot you. But I'm just saying some of the guys.
Well, if I don't say your name, guys, don't get mad. But
right.
We had so many good ones. But guy asked me, in fact, this weekend we were talking, and he said, "Was Ian Days the best running back you ever had?" I said, "Well, he was really, really, really good." I said, "But how can you put him over Brandon West?" We didn't win it with Brandon West, but golly, man, the guy goes to college at Western Michigan and sets the all-time NCAA yardage record.
Right.
He was such a good
and he was introduced really in the semifinals against Brookwood when nobody knew who he was. Yeah.
Jarris Williams, the Matrix. Kevon Hutchinson.
Yeah.
I mean, golly, there's so many. I don't like singling them out because we had so many. I mean, you ordered Chris Williams, Calvarez, Bessa, both of them. My last year here got offered by Alabama.
Right.
And Coach Saban. So, there were just so many of those guys. J.J. Green. I mean,
Okay.
You can't forget J.J. Green.
Okay. J.J. Green, this is me saying this, is the best high school football player to ever play at Camden County. He started as a freshman at the highest level. Every game he played on TV or anywhere else, he was a factor offensively, defensively, and on special teams.
Yes.
So to me, that's how I see it.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't ever want to say one guy over another because it's so different.
I'm just saying because he played because of the 4 years that he played, and he was in every game. He was a deciding factor every game.
He's the only guy in my whole career that has started for 4 straight years. And that's saying something.
That's saying a lot.
I've had some good ones.
That's saying a lot.
But, and like you said, offensively, defensively, and special teams. And, he might not have been the best running back we had. He might not have been the best DB we had. But you put it all together and doing it for 4 years, it's hard to keep him off of near the top of the list anyway. And one of the ones that I absolutely love, and he such a great player for us was Jared Davis.
Yes.
And Jared, to me, Jared just did everything right.
Right.
It didn't matter if it was in math class or the weight room or on the practice field or on Friday nights.
Right.
You were going to get everything he had.
Right.
And, Lord, he was a first-round draft pick, So, but there's just been so many. I mean, you mentioned the Hall of Fame thing, but, in coaching – you win awards like that because you have real good players.
Right.
And I've been blessed to have great players throughout my career, not just at Camden, but dang near everywhere I've been.
Everywhere.
And, but high school football, though, it's not always about the great ones. It's about those average ones
that do their job
and don't know they're not great.
Right.
You got to convince them they are. And we had a lot of really good players over the years, too.
Coach, I need to ask a question that I think all avid fans want to know. Man, when you used to lock us out of like them playoff preparation and you would keep them and you would cut the lights out and all, I want to know what went on. I'm like, Coach done locked the whole facility down and got these kids out here 12 o'clock at night. Seemed like to me.
We had to wait till it got dark.
I was like, man. And they would come out willing to kill anything.
We saved that for special occasions. We didn't do it every year. It was always,
I know.
But Coach Dorsey taught me that, Calvin. I got to go give him credit. But
wow.
when I was a defensive coordinator at McEachern, we were playing a team and for the region championship. Back in those days, you literally played a game, then you played the region championship,
Right.
then you had 3 more playoff games.
Right.
So we were playing Campbell in the region championship game at McEachern, and the game was going to be at South Cobb. You didn't get to play at home; you had to play somewhere else. So on Wednesday night, we had gone to South Cobb to practice, and when we got done, Coach Dorsey told our team, he said, "Look," he goes, "I want you to spread out over this field." And he said, "Lay down," and he goes, "And I'm going to turn the lights out." And he goes, "I want you to see yourself doing something great tomorrow night."
Visualizing.
And so we did it. And when it was over, I had a linebacker that was a really good player. He was just a junior that year, but he went to Tennessee later. And he was he's a nut. I mean, I loved him, but man, he was off the chain. Well, when we got done, Coach Dorsey turns the lights back on, and this kid come running up to me, and I'm sitting on the bench by now, and everybody's getting up to go. And he come up to me, he said, "Coach, you want to know what I visualized?" I said, "Well, yeah, tell me, Keith." And I thought he's probably going to say, "Yeah, I saw my girlfriend," something. Anyway, he goes, "Coach," he said, "You know that screen pass we've been working on all week they run?" I said, "Yeah."
I'm going to take it to the
He
house.
goes, "I'm going to pick that off and run it in for a touchdown." And sure enough,
He did it.
the first possession of the game, they get the 3rd down, and they run that little tailback screen, and Steve picks it off, and he's gone. And he gets to about the 2-yard
look
line.
at you.
No, they ran him down. They tackled him on like the 2-yard. No, we went on and scored, and we
Right.
won the game. But when he came to the sideline, I said, "Keith, man, it was going great right there till you woke up about the 2-yard line." But so I just put that in my back pocket, and I said, "This is a good motivational tool." And I would bring that out when it was a really, really, really big game.
So it was all about visualization.
Yeah, and and again, that's a high school coach's job is getting kids
Psychological.
to believe that they can
Yes.
play, that
Yes.
they can do something they don't think they can. And,
Yes.
I think it helped. It helped me. I'd always lay down there and see us doing good things too,
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Okay, Coach, I want to get to I know over the past few years here, and I know you got kids all over the state that you've coached, but man, you've been having kids that pass away, as a coach, it's like being a second father. Like, how does that hit you?
well, it ain't easy. And, I mentioned to you earlier, unfortunately, it's happening more frequently than it used to. And I
Right.
guess, we're all getting older, whatever.
right.
But, a lot of people don't realize it, but you spend so much time with these kids. You spend more time with them than you do your own kids sometimes.
Right.
You're at camps, you're on the bus, you're, with them in the locker room, the weight room, practice. It's just you see them at school. And, when something like that happens, it hits you hard. I had one, in fact, last week, a kid that played for me at Cedar Shoals named Tony Bing.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away, and when I got that call, man, it killed me, because when Tony was a junior in high school, his mom passed away over the summer, and I can still remember sitting there at her funeral, and just seeing Tony he was devastated, and but he overcame it. He lived with it, and he wound up having a great senior year. And he had some issues because it damaged him. But he overcame it. And then to see that he had died, and we lost Rod Freisen recently.
Right.
And, last year when we were playing, we were getting ready to play Walton, I think, and I get a phone call from T.J. Timms' mom. And telling me that he had passed away, that day. And, it hits hard. When they get in trouble sometimes, sometimes they get in trouble, sometimes great things happen. They have kids, they got families, all that kind of stuff. But, that bond, that's one of the neat things about coaching, that bond you have with those kids. There's highs and lows, but it's special.
So I can remember you at Grayson. And you told me during the summer, you said, "Calvin, I got the most talent, but they hadn't been together the whole time.
Grayson was a unique year.
And you pulled that together though, and y'all won the state championship.
It wasn't easy.
Right.
One of the hardest years I've ever had. The hardest year I ever had as a head coach. I think, there's a lot of things that happened there that created that, and we had so much talent, but there were a lot of kids that, for whatever reason, moved in before their senior year to the school.
For whatever reason.
Yeah, and I literally, most of that happened before I ever even got hired.
Right.
There were a couple after I got hired, but, and there was a large group of sophomores who had all been at different schools in middle school.
They all played together.
And they decided to all come to Grayson as freshmen.
Right.
Well, they all thought they were going to start as sophomores. And then you had all these kids moved in as seniors. And then you had all the Grayson kids who had grown up playing in the Gwinnett Football League together and all. And so it was like 3 different teams. And they all had their own agenda. And then their parents really had their own agenda. I could tell you some stories about that stuff now. It would just curl your hair there. But we were so talented, and in every position just about. But honestly, it was the 9th game of the year. We went to Hoover, Alabama, and played on ESPN. And that was the first game
they played together
that I thought they even gave a rip about whether or not we won or lost, instead of how many touches am I going to get, whatever. So, but we're at Hoover. It's a good trip. We played really well. We beat them badly. And it was the first time that I saw a glimmer of a team. The next week, we played South Gwinnett in the final game, and that's a rivalry game for us, and it kind of happened again. Well, first round, the playoffs start, and it's like the momentum started building, and they just kept getting better and better, and they finally halfway started caring about, the
One
3
another.
different groups kind of started merging together.
Right.
The group that had been at Grayson all that time, they were really good. Some really good, high-quality character kids.
Right.
And they eventually got the rest of them to –
one out.
Yeah. And so, by the end of the year, they were fun to coach. At the beginning of the year, not so much, maybe.
Right. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get back to where you came back to Camden County to finish up your career. And coming back to Camden County, you came to finish your career, but you also came with some health issues.
Well, I didn't know that when I decided to come, I kind of did. My last year at T.L. Hanna, when I left Grayson, I went to South Carolina, and it made so much sense. They had great facilities. I wasn't really happy at Grayson. I was driving a lot. We moved over there, got a house on the lake. They were paying me a ton of money, and we had great facilities, and we had some really good players. And it was 2 great years. But during that second year, during the season, I started having some health issues, and I knew something wasn't right. And went to the doctor, and, he said, he goes, everything you're telling me, he said, I'm pretty sure you got cancer. He goes, we'll do a couple of tests, and, we'll see. Well, the tests were kind of inconclusive, but it was prostate cancer. And he, I found this out that, a lot of times their first method of treatment is to watch and see
what's going on.
And so that's what he decided. Well, I went back in 6 months. I made an appointment for 6 months, and I was still having the same issues. And he goes, well, we'll see, and, come back in 6 more months. Well, I went back 6 months, and, a year from when the first time I went, I mean, it wasn't good.
Okay, well, right there, what's some of the signs? So in case somebody's listening, what are some of the signs that they may look for?
The biggest thing for me was I had blood in my urine.
Oh.
And,
So we wait until we bleed to go see the doctor.
I didn't feel anything.
Right.
I go to the bathroom one day and I'm just peeing blood. And I'm like, well, that can't be right, And, so, again, that's one of the first signs, I guess you could say. Okay. But, looking back on it, it was frustrating that I felt like they could have
found it earlier.
Yeah. And you know, but I found out, Calvin, this is the one thing I would tell anybody that gets possibly diagnosed with it is, you know, doctors are like any other profession.
They're guessing.
Some good ones,
and
some bad ones.
A
lot of their treatments and decisions are based on your insurance. And I hate to say that, but, you know, it's like getting a PSA test, which is a blood test that tells you, you know, if it's going crazy.
Right.
You know, they won't do it but so often because of insurance. I was like, hey, man, I'll rob a bank. You know, let's check this more often.
Right.
But anyway, so I go a year. And I didn't coach that year because I knew, you know, the possibility was there. They had told me that. And so I told Inca, I said, I'm going to retire. And, you know, we're going to try to do stuff. And so we did. In 2019, I did not coach at all.
Right.
And, you know, I came down here for a reunion. I went to a bunch of high school games.
Middle school games and everything.
Yeah.
I saw you at middle school, yeah.
You know, but in October of that year,
I think that's when I called you. Let's do the podcast.
Yeah,
thing.
probably was.
Yeah.
I think in October of that year was in October. I was actually going back to my high school for a reunion there, and we're driving up the interstate and get a phone call, and they said, "Look, you know, your PSA is, you know, normal is anything below 4, and mine was 42." I said, I was joking. I said, "Is that a record?" You know, but I was scared to death, you know, and so I went in. He said, "Look," he goes, "my advice is, you know, we need to do surgery. They do some robotic, you know, deal now is a kind of," he said, "You know, you can get treated with drugs, you can get treated with radiation, you can get, you know, have surgery." And so, you know, he said, I suggest because of, you know, they do tests and they can grade how severe it is and stuff. And well, mine was very aggressive. And so he said, we need to get it out of you as soon as possible. Well, you know, I kind of regret not going back and, you know, getting another opinion, whatever. But I'm like, you know, I'm going to trust. We're going to get this out of me as soon as possible. So I had surgery right before Christmas in 2019. Surgery went well, but he told us that night after the surgery, he told Inca and then me the next day, he said, you know, it was, you know, spread enough that we were concerned. And so, you know, we had to remove some of his bladder and we had to, you know, do a little more than we wanted to. And, you know, but I felt great. Things were good. I recovered well. But then he said, look, you know, we need you to start radiation too. We just can't take any chances here. We think it might be outside.
Okay, right there, hearing that, right there, hearing that. You hearing that. In your mind, where did you go? And after going there, did those coaches, did your parents, did everything that you had in you make you continue to get up off the floor and to have the grit and the determination to keep going?
Well, you know, Calvin, I think most humans, you know, we question. You know, I mean, I'm a very religious man.
Right.
But I question my faith. I ain't gonna lie.
Right.
You know, like, you know, God, why is this happening to me?
Right.
You know,
right.
I don't drink. I don't smoke. You know, I've tried to live right. Why is this happening to me?
Right.
But then you figure out that, you know, the good Lord's on your side, you know, and you need Him. You know,
yeah.
I don't know, you know, it's scary. I ain't gonna lie. I was scared to death. You know, every time they'd say something, you know, you're thinking, golly. And you know, he told me, he said, you know, with the grade of cancer you have, and so he said, you know, the life expectancy is 3 to 5 years.
How long has it been?
6 right now, I think.
Oh, you beat us.
Well,
right now.
Yeah. So, you know, and it just hits you. I mean, you know, you know, because we all know we're going to die,
but not 3 to 5.
Yeah, you know, nobody puts a number
sentence.
on it.
Yeah, give me a death sentence.
Yeah. And so, you know, it hit hard. And when he told me I needed to do the radiation, I saw that there was a job at Tennessee Tech, and I knew the head coach. And I told Inc., I said, I'm not going to just sit around and worry about this. I said, I need to do something. Yeah. And so I went back to Tennessee Tech. They had a cancer center right there on campus. Good. And, got into COVID, that all started, but I was doing radiation treatments, had 36 days of radiation treatments, during that time. So I thought everything was great. And, thought I had, I thought I'd beat it. Right. Well, that took the job at Camden, a year and a half later, I guess. And that summer when we got down here, I started having a little more blood, and I went to a doctor here in Camden, and he told me, he said, well, I think you've got a kidney stone that's lodged in there, and I just need to remove it. I said, okay. And
interesting.
Yeah, so I, went and had the surgery, and when the surgery was over, he said, well, it wasn't a kidney stone. He said, that wasn't a problem. And, he said, we found a tumor in your urethra. And he goes, that's very unusual. He goes, so much so I've never seen it before. And he said, so we're going to, we're sending you to Baptist, MD Anderson. And so I went there, and, I had, during the season that year, and a lot of people don't know this, but I think I had 5 or 6 surgical procedures during that season. And, they weren't stay overnight, but they were all day deals. And I'm coaching a couple of games with a catheter, in, and then I got to the point that I would get blood clots and couldn't urinate. And, crazy story. When we go to North Cobb, I'm in there before the game. Right before kickoff. The principal who I knew at North Cobb, he's got me in there in their gym, and I'm in there trying to urinate because you talk about being painful when you can't go. And so I finally did. And after 5 or 6 more procedures, they kind of fixed that problem. And, it comes every now and then, but it's certainly a whole lot better than it was. But, Calvin, I prayed a lot constantly, and because, again, I figured out the doctors wasn't going to cure this, the good Lord's the only chance I had. And, I have done remarkably well. The thing with it, 2 weeks ago, I was having severe pain in my hip. And, one of the other things that happened here, they told me they did a scan of my body and, had the spot the guy had found, but I had a spot on my hip. So I had to have more radiation in my hip. But the guy told me at the time, he said, look, he goes, I said, well, it's good news, right? You've got this, they call it cyber knife radiation, and it just hits your hip, nothing else. And I said, well, that's good, right? He goes, yeah, that's good. He goes, we can get rid of that spot, He goes, but it's bad because it's moved outside your prostate, and that's called, metastasize. And he goes, once it does that, we can't cure it. I said, what do you mean you can't cure it? He goes, we can treat you. All right. And he goes, we got a lot of treatment options. He goes, but we can't cure it once it metastasizes. And that one hit me hard. I remember hearing those words, and I was trying to drive back to school, and I got there to the little cut through there now where they built all those apartments. I remember just sitting there, and people were blowing their horn behind me, and I'm just lost in thought. So that was a tough year, but, I have improved drastically. My result, they had me on some really high-powered drugs. I was doing oral chemo, hormone injections, you name it. But I've done, my body's handled it well, better than it should. And I'm convinced the good Lord's healed me. And, that's all right. The doctors probably ain't, but I am. And, but like I said, I had hurt my back and my hip a couple of weeks ago. Well, it scares you. Anytime something hurts, I'm starting to think, was that cancer, Right. But I had a MRI, a bone scan, and x-rays all last week, right before we came down here, and it wasn't cancer. It was just the fact, he said, well, you're getting old and you got back issues, But, I go every 3 months, get checked. And for quite a while now, everything's been good.
Well, I know we ain't the best of friends, but I know when me and you had that talk, when you came back and you told me that, and I was like, and you was like, Calvin, I'm telling you, I ain't telling nobody else, but this is, I was like, man, I felt good. I'm sorry. I felt good that you did expose that to me. I didn't tell anybody else, but man, I'm so proud that you're here today, and I'm glad that you told your story. And man, you're a great coach, but you're a good man too. You're a good man,
Calvin. That means a lot. It really does. And I've been blessed my entire life. The good Lord's looked after me, whether it was in coaching. I've been blessed to have great players, great staffs. Right. And he's looking after me now health-wise. So, an opportunity to tell that story because, again, you get that news. Ain't nobody on this earth that can help you. There's some doctors maybe can do this, do that. But, you need a higher power. And thankfully, my parents introduced me to that when I was a youngin'.
That's awesome. Coach, I don't know if I have anything else for you, man. I'm just glad to be associated with you. We hadn't always seen eye to eye on certain things, but this one thing I do know that you know talent, and you know that I know talent. We work with numerous kids throughout the years, if they know that we've helped them or not. But I am so glad that we had a chance to do this, man, because my podcast is about getting off the floor or eating off the floor, and man, you're an epitome of what that is today. You're standing here today showing that, and I appreciate you.
Well, Calvin, no problem. I'm glad I got the opportunity, and one thing I think you and I have in common, I've always felt this, is we both care about what happens to these kids around here.
No doubt.
We're both fortunate to get to hang around with them.
You're right. Keep you young a little bit.
Yes.
Sir. All right. Appreciate it.